Hey there team, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to an overview or revisit of Sleeping Dogs Definitive Edition. I'm sort of doing some quick fire stuff over the Christmas break. Everyone's on holiday and we're in the winter sale on Steam. So this is partly me just shouting out across both my channels great games from yesteryear that you might have missed and you might want to pick up. Like this, for example, is excellent. It still holds up and it's like $4 for the Definitive Edition with all the DLC and all that. So it's an absolute steal. If you missed it, you'd be mad not to give it a go, and if you remember it fondly, maybe it's time to go back to it, because that's ultimately the impetus. While I'll be covering and reviewing stuff on the main channel that's more modern and contemporary, I think what I'm going to do is review something every week on the second channel. Things I missed, things from 10 years ago, it's time to go back to them and do a bit more of a deeper playthrough. And so Sleeping Dogs, this is going on the list. Absolutely, no doubt about it. I've dipped back in today to play a bit of it, and it is unbelievable how good it still is and how much it holds up. Like, at least this edition. Apparently 2014 is when it released on Steam. That's like, what, 11, 12 years old? So I was expecting some age, and I suppose some's there, if you want to get technical about the graphical fidelity. However, when it's in motion and when I'm playing it, it's almost not noticeable. You forget that you're playing an older game, more so, honestly, than others, right? I'm obviously fond of nice graphics, but I'm not a stickler for them. I'm not going to get put off by dated graphics, but I can tell you as someone that still, often dips back into older games with dated graphics, this kind of stands apart because the whole package was so incredibly immersive from top to bottom, like doing chase sequences straight out of movies. There's so much physics engine or like a faux physics engine in every part of it. So when you're just running through the environment, everything's either scripted exploding or knocking things off tables. So it's a mixture of both. When you're in combat and you're knocking dudes into not just set piece stuff, like you can jam dudes' heads in grinders and doors, and like it's very violent martial arts. Makes me think of The Raid and all that. Or obviously, more Hong Kong cinema, intense martial violence. It's all here. But yeah, while there are set piece moments where you can jam people into phone booths and smash them, and it's pretty cool, it's actually the best parts is when you accidentally knock into things, boxes, cups, whatever, knocking over the bits of environment. It's not really something you look for. I guess maybe I do a bit more because I play games in this capacity and kind of review them, but it is one of those things. It might seem small, but as part of the whole, it creates such immersion. It's wild. You mix that in with what they're doing with crowd physics is pretty awesome as well. I've also just recently covered Assassin's Creed 1. That's on the list too. I'm going to be bouncing back and forth between the channels, so if you're not on the first channel, check that out. But I was raving about that was a real birth of crowd physics and them doing interesting things. And while that's a bit more slow and deliberate, this is very overwhelming by design. And the game knows what it's doing. One of the first areas that it puts you into is this night market, and there are people everywhere. And it's almost comical how, you and your companion Jackie walking through the night market are just bouncing into people. It's just shoulder room only, and honestly, even though it maybe looks a little comical and a bit silly that you're just tripping over people while you're trying to hold a dialogue, it still kind of replicates in its own way the feeling of going to such a night market and it just being so chock-a-block and smashing into people. It's a weird abstraction that kind of captures the feel, even if it looks a bit silly when put to screen. So anyway, like I said, this is a fairly brief overview, just looking at, the opening hours of the game as I get ready to review it in the next 12 months or something. If you never checked it out or you don't know anything about Sleeping Dogs, essentially it's a GTA in a Hong Kong setting if you want to be derivative, but that's a low-hanging fruit that you can grab onto. That third-person, open world, narrative, but crime-centric. It has its own twist, being that you are an undercover police officer, and it feels a lot like The Departed all these years later. I wonder if Scorsese, of all people, actually drew inspiration from this. Because, yeah, it is a pretty cookie-cutter story. All the performances are so spot on, and it hits all the beats that it needs to as you follow this tightrope navigation of being this hothead dude that comes from that background, that criminal background. That's his in. with these dudes as he tries to climb up through the triads and infiltrate them, as an undercover police officer. But, he is a loose cannon. He is a bit of a wild card and has to really thread that needle between being, a police officer upholding the law, but also in the opening sequence, you're at a drug deal where someone pulls out a fucking meat cleaver and cuts someone else's head open. And even though I've only just briefly gone in for B-roll to shout it out, to let you know it's on sale, let you know it's still excellent, I still remember how he struggles with it and he really does sort of go a bit native to not give it away. This is all memories from 12 years ago, so who knows how exactly that is, but it is one of those, is he going to cross the line into actual criminal? Will he, won't he kind of mystery hanging over the top of it and trying to navigate the trust on both sides, the police and, the growing friendships and kind of family of the criminal underworld. Anyway, it tells a story just as good as any GTA game. There will be some that will argue that it does it better. So it is in that same paradigm. And it's just really cool to come back to it, in embracing just the little mini games of it. Again, night market example, there's food stalls everywhere. If you, buy a bloody pork bun, he'll pick it up and eat it. And it puts it in, there's a healing component and there's an overheal component, but, not to take shots at something like the Yakuza games because they're a bit of a sacred cow for some, but, while I do like the food mini gaming in that, it can get a bit bogged down and slowed down, and this is much more streamlined. You just walk past the market, you interact with it, and he's got a canned animation, it's voice acted. It seems like such a small thing to get hung up on, but it's such a big thing because it's just an example of the whole synergy of the entire project trying to be immersive. He's like, yeah, I'll take one of those, and he mungs it down and it heals you up, and then you have your overheal bar for going into fights later on, or you get energy drinks. There's a bunch of girls dancing there that sold me an energy drink that makes me punch harder. So they gave me a motorbike and an open world, and as soon as I had that, I drove one block around the corner and went to a massage parlor, and that increased a whole bunch of stats for a lot of money. So that's funny. The combat is visceral and it's really good. It actually holds up better than I thought. I'm using keyboard arguably a little bit stubbornly, but I've gotten used to it. There is a strong argument it's probably better to use thumbsticks, doing some of the running sequences. It kind of wants you to repress, left shift to grapple over things, and look, it works. And I'm going to stick with it, but man, speaking of the sequences, I was going to talk about combat, but the running sequences, they're so cool, they're so cinematic. You got the drums going nuts and panpipes and all that sort of music that really G's you up, and it's all very set piece. The combat has a bit of an Arkham-esque thing going on, punches, combos, grabs that can turn into just punch-up slams, chains into a light-heavy attack, but the big takeaway is, jamming people's heads through walls and stuff like that. It's very, very visceral, and you've got like 2 different XP bars between police and violent triad, and, mine's going up because I'm smashing everyone into, AC HVAC systems or anything with moving parts that can grind them up, and it's pretty brutal. And it makes you go, why would I do this if I was a cop? And I suppose that's the point, to wonder, to have a think about it. And look, you can't forget that this was a star-studded cast. Again, coming off the back of Assassin's Creed 1. They're sort of coming from that same genre where video games were really starting to be taken seriously and taking themselves seriously as like a viable product, as opposed to now where they're the biggest entertainment industry on the planet by a country mile. But while we had like Kristen Bell doing voice work in Assassin's Creed 1, this has got bloody Lucy Liu. Emma Stone's doing early roles in this, I've read. But what really blew me away is Tom Wilkinson. I immediately remembered and recognized him. He's sort of like your handler, the inspector for the police. And people might get hung up on the pretty girls doing voices, but I think that dude is an absolute Chad, rest in peace. And it really adds a lot to it. These guys aren't phoning it in. Voice actors big and small. The slipping between Cantonese and English between a lot of the gang talk and the kind of uptight, rigid police screaming at you and that uneasy alliance. It's gripping. Again, I've barely just touched back in to revisit this for the sake of putting this video out and just letting you know that the game is excellent. It still is excellent. You should absolutely replay it. I'm going to replay it in full. I just need to slot it into my calendar. But man, it's hooked me all over again. It's so high quality. And a great example that some of the classics just, they do not lose their luster. Anyway, look, like I said, make sure you're on both my channels because I'm just going to be bouncing these videos back and forth quickfire during the sales season. Feel free to join my Discord, my community. Because the plan would be to review this at some time over the course of 2026. And I don't know, maybe you feel like playing it alongside other people that are playing it as well. Who knows? Maybe we'll get a thing going. We'll see. But at least in the short term, pick it up, man. It's a couple of dollars and it's an absolutely excellent game. Anyway, team, much just leave it there for the time being and I'll catch you guys on the next one.